Hello, welcome to our WAN-IFRA Webinar series. My name is Nicole Frankenhauser, and I'm the Advisory Coordinator for WAN-IFRA's Global Advisory, the consulting division for WAN-IFRA, based in Frankfurt, Germany. On behalf of WAN-IFRA, I'm excited to bring to the audience today a webinar featuring WAN-IFRA's own Global Advisory Director, Ben Shaw, for the webinar, Driving Value with Your Data. Additionally, in this webinar, we will introduce our Media Management Accelerator, WAN-IFRA's 6-course e-learning platform on digital revenue. This is a sneak peek into our soon-to-be-launched online learning platform, which also features a full course on digital advertising, data and analytics led by Ben Shaw. As always, we welcome our audience to join in the discussion. Once Ben concludes his presentation and the MMA introduction, we will begin our Q&A session. To submit your questions, please find at the bottom right of your control panel a box that is labeled questions. Please type in your question at any point during this webinar, and Ben will answer them in the Q&A round. A little bit more about our webinar presenter today. Ben Shaw is the Director of Global Advisory at WAN-IFRA, where he supports media companies worldwide in their digital transformation. Previously, he was Shaw Media's Chief Technology Officer and also their Chief Development Officer, responsible for driving digital revenue and audience for their digital products in the United States. Don't miss out on our upcoming global WAN-IFRA events. Next week, we have our Digital Media Europe event in Copenhagen, Denmark. Tickets are still available, so we hope to see you there. In June, we will be at our WAN-IFRA World News Media Congress in Durban, South Africa. This will be our official launch for the Media Management Accelerator. For more information about these events, visit the websites listed on your screen. And now, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce to you my colleague, Ben Shaw, who will be presenting to you on driving value with your data. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Nicole. Wonderful. Welcome to the webinar. I appreciate you spending some time with us today and to talk more about driving value with data. Over the next half an hour or so, we're going to discuss what kinds of data are out there, some important terms to think about in regards to data, what big data really is, and then we're going to look at 5 concrete ways that you can add value to your organization with data. Then after that, we're going to take a quick look at our exciting new online learning platform called the Media Management Accelerator. And after that, we can open it up for a few minutes of discussion. It looks like we've got a really uniquely global audience on the webinar today, so I really look forward to some interaction as time allows. Knowing data and how to manage data is becoming more and more crucial for publishers. Without the ability to target based on specific characteristics of our audience, we will really not have anything compelling to sell our customers. Digital ad spending has entered the prime time. And while traditional media like TV still has a really sizable lead as far as overall spend goes, digital advertising is rapidly closing the gap. The digital advertising landscape really continues to transform, and not just the last couple of years, but the last 5 to 10 years, and looking out 5 to 10 years in the future, transformation is really the word to be thinking about. Just think, in less than 10 years, Facebook has more than 1.5 billion monthly users. The smartphone is a common part of daily life in many places around the world, and programmatic advertising is a multi-billion euro category that accounts for 50% of all display advertising. But even with such explosive growth, only a few companies take the lion's share of revenue. We're thinking specifically here of GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon. But Google and Facebook have really taken the lion's share of digital advertising revenue. Publishers must continue to maximize their existing digital ad revenue sources over just waiting for growth to come to them. The transformation and disruption of the online advertising landscape should not only show us how quickly things are moving in online advertising, but how central data has been to pushing our industry forward. And data and revenue are not just about having something attractive to sell. According to a recent Bain & Company study, businesses that led the way in using data strategically are 5 times more likely to make decisions faster than their peers, 3 times more likely to execute decisions as they intended to, twice as likely to be in the top quarter of financial performers within their own industry, and twice as likely to use data very frequently when making decisions. The payoff for media companies includes engaging the audience more deeply with more targeted news and advertising, and most of all, the ability to compete with other sophisticated online media companies that are frequently ahead of traditional media companies with advanced technology strategies. So what type of data are there out there? In general, there are 3 types of data: first-party data, third-party data, and something we like to call second-party data. First-party data can loosely be defined as information a publisher itself has collected about the publisher's own audience. In this situation, first-party data is you. This could be anything from surveys that your readers fill out to the mobile number they use to call into your service hotline, or even their dietary preferences they left in the sign-up to your event, and so on. When we talk about display advertising, first-party data is most often cookie-based, and it can include information gathered from your website analytics platforms, CRM systems, and your business analysis tools. For example, when did a reader come to the site? How many pages did she visit? Where did she spend most of her time? What banners did she click on? What did she buy? In general, first-party data is the most valuable data that you can collect about your audience, and it becomes a powerful resource when you tie it to a digital ad campaign. This is because first-party data provides specifics about your existing users and your customers, and it's a really key component of site retargeting, something that Amazon has built an empire on. In addition to first-party data, you might have heard about third-party data and even the second-party data thing. Third-party data refers to the data coming in from sources outside of the data that you directly collect. This type of data can eventually become big data. Second-party data is a term that is being used more frequently now also. By second party, I mean that it is somebody else's first-party data. Partnership arrangements are sometimes made to share data for a mutual benefit. So, for example, companies that have overlapping target markets might be willing to join together to share and both benefit. Like, for example, a nutrition center and a fitness center, or a fishing equipment and boat sales company might want to trade notes for the purposes of their own marketing. The greatest value of first-party data is, if I ask my actual customers about themselves directly, I'm likely to get a much better and more valuable picture of them than if I bought some third-party data that was just representative of all that audience, but taken from people who largely weren't, your customers at all. So data sources. What are some sources of first-party data that you might have laying around already that you could begin using to analyze and add value? Well, there's website registration, financial accounting systems, sales data, information from your customer relationship management apps, app usage, your email system, hey, even server logs, unstructured network data, down into your phone logs from your customer service center. Here's a practical example of combining some of those sources, how it can add value in a simple way. 3 first-party data sources here on the screen are web analytics, app usage, and your CRM system. If you link them together, it can be quite powerful. If you have web analytics goals that represent user engagement, send that information to your CRM system. Or if a user installs your app, make sure that it is logged against that visitor or subscriber in analytics. And that way you can segment in-app users versus non-app users. The method to link these sources is to find shared data fields. but you got to be careful here. You got to be very careful about sending personally identifiable information to many analytics suites, regardless of the country that you're based in. So you need to find a way to link this data together while respecting your users' privacy and preventing accidental data leakage that could affect the trust that people have in your brand. So how do you start? You've got to have somewhere to store it. You have to have somewhere to process this data, and you need machines and software suites that can combine it to gain actionable insights. Where should you keep all of it? Depending on the size of your organization and the sophistication of your architecture, many media companies choose to work with partners, and I think a lot of you on the call would be in that space. Partners that understand how these tools can integrate your data, and then even some groups of publishers have embarked on a shared services model with other publishers directly to gain scales of economy with these large system infrastructures. A data management platform is generally what we're talking about here. It's what a typical outsourcer in this area is called. It's a piece of software that, as described, sucks up, sorts, houses information, and spits it back out in a way that's useful for publishers and your clients. In our industry, they're most often used to manage IDs based on tracking cookies and to generate audience segments, which are subsequently used to target specific users with online ads. With the rise of ad tech, advertisers now buy media across a huge range of different sites and through a ton of different middlemen, ad networks, and exchanges. Using a DMP can help you tie all that activity together and the resulting in campaign and audience together also in one centralized location and use it to help optimize future ad buys and ad creatives. If you're thinking about looking into data management platforms, and maybe that's even the reason you're on the call today, there are definitely WAN-IFRA partners such as CSense that do these things, and many of our other partners. But some also out there are Adobe's Audience Suite, Oracle's Blue Kai platform, for example, and Crux would be, just off the top of my head, some major ones. So that's really first-party data, how you can combine first-party data to add some value. But now let's talk about a big subject, big data. Every time I think about big data, I'm reminded of a really funny saying, well, I hope it's funny, but a funny to me saying that I heard a few years ago. It's that knowing a tomato is fruit is knowledge, and not adding it to a fruit salad is wisdom. In the same way, it's important to know that even with all the benefits and intelligence that big data might be able to bring you, a media manager really has to have a broad view of their organization to be able to wisely apply big data's outcomes in order to drive revenue for our media companies. But what is big data? We've heard the buzzword for years now, and so many people think it's so many different things. What is it? The basic idea behind the phrase big data is that everything we do is increasingly leaving a digital trace, and that trace can be tracked, used, and analyzed. Big data refers to that data being collected and our ability to make use of it. And I think this is where the definition oftentimes gets cloudy. Big data can sometimes be referred to as the data itself that is being collected, and sometimes it is referring to our ability to make use of it. So big data often comes from external data sources. And what are some of the types of things that might be combined with your first-party data to gain actionable insights? Well, there's government statistics and records like census information. There's other web analytics data that's available. There's location data. There's third-party data services like Dun & Bradstreet or Acxiom that have a lot of information both on businesses and people. And even social networking data. A lot of the social networks have application programming interfaces or APIs that you can connect into. Another way that we can talk about big data is to describe it in its 4 V's, as a lot of people call it. That's volume, velocity, variety, and value. Let's talk about each one of these very briefly. Volume. The main characteristic that makes data big is the sheer volume of it. Think for a second that Facebook has more users than China has people. And think for a second about the fact that Facebook allows you to upload and store as many photos as you want all the time. Try to picture a system for properly handling and storing and serving all of those billions and billions of images. That's what I'm talking about when we start talking about the volume of big data. The second V that people typically use to describe big data is velocity. It's the frequency of incoming data that needs to be processed. Think about how many text messages, Facebook status updates, or credit card swipes are being sent on a particular mobile carrier every minute of every day, and you'll have a better idea of what we're talking about when we talk about velocity. One of the most interesting things about big data is the variety. Traditional data types included things that fit neatly into a spreadsheet. Like bank statement data, date, time. These are commonly referred to as structured data. Structured data is augmented by unstructured data, which is where things like Twitter feeds, web pages, web server logs are put. Anything that can be captured and stored but doesn't have a model that neatly defines it would be called unstructured data, and it would fit in that variety. With unstructured data, there really aren't any rules. It could be a picture, a voice recording, a tweet. They can all be different, but express ideas and thoughts based on human understanding. And one of the goals for big data is to be able to use technology to take this unstructured data and to make sense of it. And lastly, the biggest V probably, and probably the most obvious one to the people on the call today, is value. What's the value in all of this? Will the insights that you gather from analysis create a new product line? Is it going to create a cross-selling opportunity? Will you help find your next cost-cutting measure? Without a great question, you're not going to get any good answers and without any value. So that's another way that I like to think about big data in those 4 V's of volume, velocity, variety, and value. Now, let's talk about our top 5 ways that we talk about in the Media Management Accelerator about how to actually add value with data. What can you do in your organization and the data that you already have to add value? Number 5 would be to give data a purpose, purpose-driven data. Better performance always means something different to different organizations. And it will also mean that different types of data should be aggregated and analyzed depending on specific use cases. It's the pieces of data that help meet your specific business goals that have the most value. Don't start thinking about adding value with data. Start by defining your goals. Number 4, standardize and coordinate your tracking. Many companies lack an established system to benchmark and track cost per click and cost per 1,000 impressions for display placements and keywords. But executives often end up needing to rely on agencies to determine whether rates are competitive or not. If you can standardize how this is tracked, then you'll be able to provide a lot more value to your organization. Number 3, find the right questions. The exact question that your media company should ask depends on your priorities. Your clarity is essential. Examples of some good questions, I think, in media would be, how can we reduce our HR costs in editorial? Or how can we increase digital subscription revenues? Iterate through all the actual business examples and continually probe to find where the value lies for your media organization. Number 2, connect the dots. Often organizations drill down on a single data set in isolation, but fail to consider the forest for the trees. What do these different data sets convey when you put them all together? For example, your HR department might have very detailed employee data. Operations might have really comprehensive information about all your assets, and finance might have a ton of detail behind a P&L. Excuse me. Each set of information carefully is certainly useful, but additional value might be nestled in the spaces among separate data sets. And what is the Media Management Accelerator's #1 way to create value with data? Is to create processes instead of individual projects. The #1 way that you're going to increase revenue by using data is to make it a process, not a single project with a beginning and an end. Data and analytics needs a purpose and a plan. The process for using the data in decision making should really be a loop. Best-in-class organizations around the globe adopt this approach to their competitive advantage. Google, for example, insistently makes data-focused decisions, builds customer feedback into solutions, and rapidly iterates products that people not only use but love, and so should your media company. So that's it for my overview of how to drive value with data. I hope you'll take a couple of minutes with us now that we can just talk briefly about an online learning platform that we're launching at WAN-IFRA that we're very excited about. It's launching at our Durban Congress in June, and it will be available for people to log in very shortly. It's called the Media Management Accelerator. To give you a flavor of it, we have a short teaser trailer, which we'll play right now. It has never been more crucial for news media companies to grow their digital revenue. And indeed, I'm sure that's why most people are on the call with us today. But how can publishers be sure that their key staff really understand the fundamentals of generating digital revenue? Our Media Management Accelerator is built to help publishers with an affordable online learning platform so that you can ensure your staff understands the changing digital revenue landscape. We built this for people and for companies. We want to provide every European publisher with an amazing tool to accelerate growth in sustainable digital revenue. And we want to provide every participant with a valuable certification to demonstrate their understanding of digital revenue to prospective employers. The instructors that we've gathered for this experience have unparalleled insights and experience from within the industry, living in the thick of the digital transformation. And our project team that we were able to assemble has unmatched access to best practice cases from around the world based on all of the research and reports that we do and regular conferences that we hold. Through being funded through the Digital News Initiative, we were able to select best-in-class learning technology to build all these awesome cases and video learning on. We have interactive quizzes, case studies from VG, Media, Build, and even 24SATA. And we have multiple interactive lessons and videos really set up in sort of a Spotify style playlist that you can see from a mobile phone, on a tablet, or at your desk at work. We have 6 different courses that are all focused on how to manage digital media. We have digital revenue strategy and diversification, how to really grow and launch, how to launch and grow rather, paid content and reader revenue, what the formats are, and what marketplaces should you be in as far as digital advertising goes. How can you organize a team take your advertising offerings to market and really execute in the best possible way. Data and analytics, which you got a brief view of here today, and even how to innovate and integrate a startup culture in your work. If you'd like to check out what we have, you can go to mma.wan-ifra.org. You can sign up for a free account, and with that free account, you can see a free lesson from each one of those courses. If you'd like to take the whole certification program, it's very affordable, and there's instructions on the site on how to do it. So I really thank you for your time today. We've covered what kinds of data are out there, some important terms to think about in regards to data, what big data really is, and then we looked briefly at 5 ways that you can add value to your organization with data. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Nicole, and if there are questions, we can field those.
Wow, thank you, Ben, for a very interesting presentation on driving value with your data. I learned a lot. I especially like the 4 V's. I won't forget them now. So thank you for that. Also really interesting just getting a refresher on the different terms for data. So really appreciated that. I'm sure our audience did as well. Just want to go ahead and get started, and also to let everyone know that you can still ask your questions. Just submit them through the questions box in the control panel, and we can, get those fielded to Ben. I have a few questions that we can just start with here. There's just so many ways that media companies can use their data. There's a lot of data that they're getting every day from their users. But where should the data and analytics live? Which department should we start with?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, Nicole. Thank you. There are a lot of places that the data department and the data scientists are housed in a lot of media organizations. And it really, truly, when it comes down to it, is based on the organization's needs. But oftentimes, I see data either being out on its own or being integrated in with editorial and the digital side of editorial. And I think that's probably a mistake. I think that there are so many different types of data and so many types of answers that you'll get when you just start without a question, that really having data, the data scientists, and the direction of your data in the business department, along with advertising, really focused on driving revenue.
Great. What is the most important website data for tracking?
Oh, that's great. We didn't really have time to go into detail on the specific types of whether it was website data or demographics and audience segmentation today. But I really think it's important on a number of levels for media managers to focus on really just a few different types of data when you're looking at web analytics. There's a ton of things that you can look at, but I would say that maybe the 4 top things that I would look at would be page views, unique users, and pages per visit. Now those are 3, and if you take those 3 together, you get a really good look at how engaged your audience is without just seeing the flood of traffic that comes in when an article from your website gets posted to Reddit. The 4th one that I would mention, being very interesting to people right now, was based on a conversation I had with an agency a couple of weeks ago in Berlin. That they were saying the most important thing for media managers to start with right now is what your local, unique, daily users are. I thought that was very interesting. That probably really shows what your real audience is on a day-to-day basis. Starting with daily, unique users will help you really grow and decide what are some strategies to grow in your market.
Great. And then just kind of covering the broader topic about what roles and skills are needed, who should be analyzing your company data?
That's another good question. A lot of people at this stage would want to have dedicated, whether data managers or data scientists, I'm not sure what the right term is, but if you don't have a dedicated person and you won't be adding that in your budget until next year, I would say that it would be somebody that was in the business department, that was working closely with probably digital advertising, and there might even be somebody with a profile of, this sounds a little strange, but maybe even a political science background. Really, you can look at using data, especially when you're growing audience with user segmentation, as kind of trying to win an election. So somebody with that background might have a good profile.
Great. We have a question from our audience, Ben. Is there a big difference in legislation on privacy issues in European countries?
I believe that Europe, in general, is becoming very different to the rest of the world with the new legislation that's coming out. But Germany is very privacy centric, but now that there are some EU mandates coming out, there'll be less differences between each.
Okay. Another audience question. Are there any examples of media companies already using predictive analytics based on data collected and stored? Agencies and marketers do so.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think this is where a lot of companies are going, and a lot of WAN-IFRA's tech partners and vendors are starting to move in that direction. I would say that that beyond looking at any specific publishers working with specific vendors, one interesting model that I would say to look at would be the consortium of companies that are working in a shared services model with Leap Media Solutions. So a number of regional companies in the US have got together to be able to afford that larger big data infrastructure.
Okay. And then when we were covering the 4 V's, I'll relist them again: volume, velocity, variety, and value. Value is obviously our core topic for today. And you had mentioned what media companies can achieve when using their data smartly and to basically understand more their users. And you had mentioned that some insights could lead through analysis maybe to a new product idea, or so do you have any good cases on, or maybe mention some cases from our MMA Module 5 on how companies are using their data?
Sure, that's another excellent question, thank you. I think one of the interesting places for a lot of publishers right now with data is location, because we're all trying to figure out ways to monetize our mobile experience, even though our audiences have largely moved over. And the most interesting way that I've seen a publisher combine location services with the mobile experience is actually our friends at Schibsted and Aftonbladet did a really neat, I believe they presented at our Congress last year about an initiative with a soup company, a grocery store, and a beacon that was set up to trigger when somebody with the Aftonbladet app was near a free sample giveaway. Okay. So they were able to, with that information, on the subsequent day after the free giveaway, at lunchtime, send coupons out to all of the people with the Aftonbladet app that had been there. And that was a very valuable experience, all based on location and mobile data that Schibsted had done.
Right, and they're quite advanced because, of course, that requires a geo-tracking feature, possibly on an app, or...
Yeah, you definitely, as a baseline, need to have an app that people are logged into, which is still something that I think a lot of regional publishers are still getting to.
Okay, Great. And then when we were talking about the first-party data, second-party data, and third-party data, you said that the third-party data can eventually become big data. If the first-party data is exactly what I'm getting from my own users, which is essentially the best data, the second-party data is someone else's first-party data. How can the third-party data eventually become big data then? Can you just refresh us on that? Because it's...
Sure. Yeah, thank you. There are a number of ways that I could think of describing that, but one that I would think back on when we were talking about political science and elections, if you know about your audience and the type of segments that you have, let's say that you're very strong with young families that have a couple of kids that are in a wealthy suburb that, choose a few more characteristics in one place. Using census data, you should be able to find other markets and other parts of your market that those types of segments exist that your digital footprint doesn't have a good presence in. So you could design marketing to get that audience, but that comes through the combination of some third-party data from the government and your first-party data, knowing what types of audience segments you're strong on.
Okay, all right. And audience, do you have any more questions? If so, we can address them offline. Oh, we did get one more question coming in. How should you distribute data information that you collect about your users' customers through your company? Should everyone in the organization get updates, and how often, daily, weekly?
That also is a great question. You have to both focus on maintaining the trust of your customers and your audience as the forefront. So whatever you do, you have to do it in a very responsible and ethical manner. That being said, the second most important is transparency. And transparency only comes from a clear vision that's clearly communicated and that is kept regularly. So I believe that even though everyone should be getting different types of data, somebody in editorial maybe should have different types of data than somebody in advertising, everybody should be actively incented to be working with data, but only specific types of data. You shouldn't just have access to everybody's credit card information or insurance information. So I believe that in some circumstances, like an editorial, probably more than daily is important. Maybe even real time if you're trying to determine if your editorial budget for the day is winning or you need to do some rewrites. Or in some other use cases, weekly and monthly might be adequate depending on the department.
Yeah. But the takeaway message here is that you should be using your data, you should be analyzing it and applying it, right?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Ben, if you're okay, I think we'll conclude the webinar for today. Audience, if you have any questions, Ben is happy to answer them offline. Also, I want to remind everybody that we have our Digital Media Europe conference next week, where we will be making demos of the Media Management Accelerator. And for all of you that have asked me questions about logging in, feel free to just send me an email and we can get you registered with the Media Management Accelerator. I also want to thank our audience for joining us today. I want to thank Ben, my colleague, for presenting this webinar today. And again, we hope that you will join us next time for our WAN-IFRA Webinar series. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Nicole.
Bye.